market moves and trade tension, how geopolitics and regulation are redrawing the gaming map in Asia.
Good afternoon. My name is Oliver De Bono. I'm the CEO at Quantum Gaming. I'm joined with my panelists today, Ramon Garcia, Executive Chairman at DFNN, and Kyle Wiltshire. I said that correct? Yeah, for CEO at TESTA. Very interesting subject. I want to just jump in. I'm not a big fan of Q&A. I mentioned to both of you earlier. The topic from today it's a little bit geopolitics. And Ramon, we were literally just talking about some interesting subjects. And the panelists before us were also mentioning some topics that we wanted to kind of explore a little bit further. I think the main question, or let's say the question on everyone's mind, which region is going to capitalize on the gaming market? Let's be direct. There's a lot of changes happening in the Asian landscape. Great topic that came up before, Thailand. I want to bring that up. But I first want to talk about something that's kind of a burning question. I mean, the Philippines has been a gaming hub here in Asia for decades. Now the land-based market is growing, the online, the new license regime. Ramon, I want to start with yourself. You mentioned there are some interesting things coming to light. What can we expect to see here in the local market over the next couple of years? Where is the new, let's call it, interest coming and investment? So I'll hand over to you just to give us a little bit of a brief on the changing market.
Oliver, thanks. Good morning to you out there. Sigma, good morning. Kyle, thank you also for being here. Now, I think the panel ahead of us already touched on the tariffs, right? So tariffs, no matter where you go, is going to affect the market. So in the Philippines, you have a great regime. I think the first time they ever came in, and I was at Sigma, I said, it would be great if they lowered taxes. Where they lowered taxes. There's still some inconsistencies, and this tariff will play out no matter where you go. So the Philippines right now, if you look at the market leaders, there's some inconsistency on the tariff. The leaders have about an 800 basis points advantage on their tax versus the other PIGOs. That's a very big difference. So that probably should be worked out by PAGCOR. But since they are very responsive, there's another gaming regulator here called the PCSO, which, I want to prove regulation is important. Geopolitically, is because we had a case against PCSO for close to 20 years. And that should tell you the Philippines has a venue for questioning the matters and being able to defend yourself, which maybe other regions around Asia will not allow you. But suffice it to say, this administration has been so pro-business that we have settled our case with the other regulator and are now live with them. So that should tell you the importance of geopolitics and regulations. Now, when you talk about regulations, it's not only about tax. It's also about ease of access to markets, global mobility, payment solutions. All of these geopolitics, whether there's tension in the West Philippine Sea, will drive your gaming and impact the Philippines. So if you look at global mobility, the Philippines just lifted all visa requirements for Indians. And you know that India is going to be a very large economy as well. You've got Thailand, Indonesia, all offering their versions of a golden visa, and the president just signed into law our equivalent. That will also bring into question, going back to perhaps the POGO, if you are asking digital workers to come to the Philippines, and they happen to be from the gaming industry servicing Brazil legally, and they have this visa, will you consider them a POGO? So these are some of the geopolitical aspects that are there. I know Japan has been sending their advisors here. Thailand, they said earlier, will be on a learning curve. But the Philippines does have that infrastructure and an innovative mandate and a friendly, exposure now to the Japan, US, Australia, South Korea enhancement as New Zealand. So these things will balance it out.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we know that the Philippines is, let's say, one of the more mature regions in the area, especially when it comes to not just, looking at the license regime, okay? It's not, the license regime is one part. That's what's telling you that, okay, this region is establishing a framework so I can bring my business here. But it's also about the workforce. Kyle, we were talking about this. When you're building a gaming business, when you're going online, when you're going land-based, substantial investments, right? And the Philippines, okay, there's turmoil everywhere. New framework brings it out. But we were talking about learning from these examples, especially in Europe, where we've seen over-regulation has led to new black markets. And this is a really interesting subject because we were just going onto this and we've seen some new regions coming out here in Asia. You know, Thailand was a surprise for everyone, going from a blanket ban to a potential regulation. What do we expect? Kyle, I want to jump over to you. Competition here in Asia. Do we think it's going to become a more competitive landscape where Southeast Asian states are going to compete for those workforces, for those golden visas?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Philippines workforce and experience is probably the deepest in Asia, and one of the deepest in the world, honestly. I first started interviewing for positions here in 2009, and I moved here in 2010. And it was around long before me. So, I mean, the talent and the workforce here in the Philippines has been through it a few times. You know, you can find employees that have worked with multiple operators, multiple providers. They kind of have the scar tissue and the lessons learned. But I have seen in the last year or two, as different licensing things change, more and more talent hubs in Thailand, a lot of hiring in Cambodia. So I think the previous panel was talking about having a bit more of a BPO type of model or service provider, you know, not licensed, not taking bets from overseas, but providing infrastructure and talent and a workforce to basically do all the back office and all the operations that makes these things hum. And I see that increasing. So I personally believe the Philippines has probably the largest edge just because it's been in the space the longest. The community is very much here. But I see up-and-comers. So Thailand especially, I think, is something to keep an eye on. And with them looking at a new license, new regulatory approach, yeah, certainly something to keep in mind.
I mean, that's definitely it. And I think in general, there's already been a swing. We were also saying earlier that I think anybody who's working in the Asian landscape knows that there's a big, let's say, increase of community in Thailand right now. A lot of people are going there. But again, the local market here is a lot more mature. But let's look at global political shifts. I mean, how has, you know, global trade tensions affected the local market? Have we seen any changes between, let's say, the US and Chinese tariffs? Is that trade war affecting the local market here in the Philippines?
It is good and bad, but I do want to take off from Kyle. There are a deep bench here, but there are also stumbling blocks. For example, if Japan actually does open up their integrated resorts, they don't really have people. They need about 3 million new workers. And the biggest sucking sound from the gaming industry will be those experienced people from the Philippines going to Japan. I would think in Thailand also, if they're behind the curve, they're going to start poaching people from the regulated casinos here. So those are some hurdle rates that I would look at, again, on global mobility. But as you said, there are tensions, very obviously. In Singapore recently, you had your ISS, which was your strategic Security Council meeting of the countries, and China did not show up. And the Secretary of Defense of the United States made some very strong statements. So the Philippines has seen a pullback on the junket operations as well as the Chinese having come in here. But that being said, while on a security perspective, there are some contentions, issues that need to be negotiated, by and far the Philippines has no direct problem with the Chinese people. And if you look at it, historically, the Philippines has not had a race riot, unlike Southeast Asia. Everyone has had an overseas Chinese issue on discrimination, or even Indonesia, you know, violent, or Malaysia, violent issues against their Chinese population. The Philippines hasn't. So that should be something that should be seen as a positive. Going forward, again, when you talk about geopolitics, gaming is one industry, but it is also dependent on other industries. Thailand, by far and large, has a better infrastructure than the Philippines for tourism at this point. Their airports are better. But if you look at maybe 5 to 10 years from now, the second largest investment in airports in Asia after Korea will be the Philippines. So these are the things that are positives, but you also have some hurdles that might affect the gaming industry here.
So you mentioned Korea, and that's actually one of the subjects I wanted to bring up because, I mean, we are seeing such a political shift here in Asia. I mean, it's changing. You had markets that had full blanket bans. Korea is now looking at allowing overseas, what we call it kind of casino tourism, right? But what happens when Japan, Korea, Thailand, potentially Cambodia, that's on and off, what happens if they all say, I want to capitalize on this market, I want to bring the workforce? There will be a hole in the market.
There will be a hole in the Philippines, for sure, because talent today is global. I mean, if Europe has their golden visas, and I'd like to admit, a lot of Filipinos, Indonesians, and Chinese are now Portuguese, Spanish, Germans, Swedish, and so forth, that same industry need will pull a lot of talent from the Philippines. Hopefully, where we are lacking is the ability to continuously train up more people. And this is something the gaming industry should look at, together with the regulators, PAGCOR, and so forth. What cannot be stopped, and I think this is where our Bureau of Internal Revenue should look at it, is to become much more friendly with the regulators, because any tightness from our regulators just means the black market will come in. Like, I know the lottery sector is being hit hard by people who are selling Powerball in the Philippines, technically illegally.
Well, that's really interesting, because we were actually talking about that as well. I mean, look at markets today. We can use Europe as an example, because it's a more mature market. You have, in the earlier panel, they really brought up something interesting in the UK, and it's not to criticize, but over-regulation has led to a brand new black market. Today, I remember a time nobody would consider the UK without a localized license. And then you have new regimes coming into the market, like Anjouan, Quetta, Nevis, and they're creating a new door that these over-regulated zones are simply creating a brand new black market. Kyle, I want to switch over to you. Do we see that happening in Asia? Do we see, the risk of new rules, new regulation creating what was essentially a black market in the past, but could that come back?
I don't personally see it yet. I mean, in terms of the PICO license, it looks quite flexible. I believe some of the commission rates were even dropped. To your point earlier, if you go to any European conference, Germany and the UK come up over and over again. And, the core of what we do as a company is we just look at what is the actual player experience. And the reality is not just taxation and everything, it's that they've neutered the player experience so badly that just why would you want to play in a German casino where you have to stop every half hour and you're treated like a child, and the slot reel takes 3 seconds to spin and €1 is as much as you can bet. Like, it's very strange to say, okay, we believe we should have responsible gaming and everything, but these are all the thousands of rules around doing it, right? So taxation and regulation is one thing, but I think the real key is, are you going to really interfere with the experience? So far, I haven't seen that in the Asian licenses, but it's something to keep in mind, that there's a scale, and if you push too hard on that scale, the players are ultimately going to say, this is more interesting over here.
100%. That's exactly the point, right? And you hit the nail on the head with that one, because as a player, I don't want to feel that I'm being regulated, right? It's one thing that I want to feel the entity I'm playing with has some level of responsibility, but if you come and tell me I can't play certain games like live casino, then what am I going to do? I'm going to go to the offshore casinos. I'm going to go to those, let's say, more flexible jurisdictions. Now, I know the market is new here. Well, it's not new, but the new regime, let's call it. We've had probably 2 decades of European licenses targeting the Asian market. But I had a question, like, now that swing is going to happen. The Asian market are becoming a lot more friendly towards the online gaming market. Do we see a reverse? Do we see a potential that the European businesses come to the Philippines, they take the upcoming remote license opportunities, and then in reverse target the European markets? Is there any scope for that?
Absolutely. You want to go ahead? Go ahead.
I had something I wanted to jump on there. For some reason, it's not very big news, but Evolution is about to open a studio here in Cebu, targeting the local market entirely at first, but I don't think there's anything stopping them from looking at the Philippines as a base for other places. So yes, that very thing could be happening in the near future. We'll see how it plays out.
Absolutely agree with him as well, and thank you for adding that. The problem is, when we come to this conference, you and I actually discussed it earlier, it's always about gaming, gaming, gaming. But I want to show you gaming, like I said, it is about a lot of other geopolitical regulations. Look at the telecom regulation in the Philippines. Today, on any island of 7,641, you have Starlink. That means you have fast internet. Big geopolitical issues, especially in Europe, people cutting the subsea cables, right? Their power. But guess what? With these new technologies of low Earth orbit satellites from Amazon, Starlink, and so forth, we have no subsea cable issues going forward, especially once their newer technologies come up. The Philippines, especially as exampled by the two regulators, Chairman Altenco and GML Robles, have decided to adopt the Philippine policy of innovation first, regulation later. And I think it's a kudos to these two gentlemen who want to grow revenue. So that's a very big change from the European mindset. And when I talked to our European partners, they said, what? They allowed you a red and white game in the Philippines? What is that? And this becomes a test market that maybe can open up the Philippines. And I would say that Brazil, having now issued it, will get a lot of learnings from the Philippines. Now, Thailand, again, going back, or let's say some of these other markets, let's say Myanmar, Laos, which are also big populations and up and coming, they haven't approved these technologies. But once they do, start looking for innovation and rapid acceleration from even Myanmar or Bangladesh or something like that, which have big populations. And Thailand, so while they have this innovation on the gaming side, there's a lot of aspects to it. So these are some of the geopolitical things that are not directly gaming, but will definitely affect gaming.
Oh, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, you know, when you're looking at an investment, especially, I mean, even just starting an online casino, wherever you put it, there's substantial investment involved. And you want that workforce, that safety net to be in a climate that you feel is quite stable, right? We've seen tons of U-turns across the Asian landscape, not only in Asia. I mean, we see it in Europe all the time. But I think what's happening now, and Sigma is a testament to, you know, what is happening in the gaming market here in the Philippines. But it is becoming the centralized home, like Malta was within the European markets. I mean, look at the size of the workforce that was established over there. Okay, we've had a certain swing. The Chinese, let's say, essentially, I wouldn't say fully left, but there was a lot of job losses during the political changes. But it's rebuilding. And I think it's rebuilding under a better baseline or foundation. What can we expect? Do we expect further changes within the new regime? Are there new potential opportunities? We've talked about tax breaks and tariffs as well. What can we expect to see in the next 12 months?
The Philippines has a unique situation, which isn't, well, maybe or is not. I defer to Kyle in Europe. But the Philippines is unique in that it's both an operator and regulator. I have a feeling there may be some moves towards that, but, you know, I'm just here listening. But I think that could be a big game changer as well if things were to move on the part where they will just be a regulator. And then we'll see probably much more innovation on that side. Because on one hand, you're an operator, right? So you see the innovation happening around you. How do you not lose out on that? So these are some of the things that probably will be your next surprises over the next 12 to 24 months in the Philippines.
100%, yeah, and that's where the interest is. I mean, ourselves, we're looking at establishing our own support networks over here. I think one interesting thing that we have found, especially within the local market, and I'm talking as an employer now here in the Philippines, the talent. There's a great talent pool. There's great communication skills, very high level of English, which you'll be surprised in many of the Asian states you don't have. So, Kyle, you've been here for what, a decade, I think now, a bit more. What is it like? Talk to me about building the entities here in the Philippines. What are the unique challenges and what are the benefits?
I think English is a huge component. More investment in STEM is needed. More investment in more modern software would be very helpful. There's a lot of commercial talent here. There's a ton of creative talent here. And there's a lot of just industry depth that's built up. So I would like to see a bit more hardcore engineering, a bit more deep software experience. I think that's going to be really necessary to really turn it into Asia's kind of software development hub for the iGaming space. I think that's maybe where some of the other Southeast Asian, East Asian countries have a bit of an advantage. So that would be my biggest thing. In the past, it was fairly hard to set up a Philippines corporation, and even if you were doing some sort of small shop, you needed 5 people on the board and everything. There's now easier structures, so a lot of that's gotten a lot better. Like I said, I first came here in 2010, I believe, and there has been consistent change toward making things more approachable. So I think the real key is just understanding what talents have been built up in the market and making sure that you know the gaps between what the market has and what it doesn't. To Ramon's earlier point, an old thing with the Philippines, not so much, it's not a gambling industry thing, I saw it in real estate and tech in general, is brain drain. Because of the high level of English, because of a highly educated workforce that can pretty much parachute into many countries, a lot of the top grads and a lot of the top earners move overseas. I remember one of my first database administrators, I think, when I was here in 2011. He got an offer with Visa, moved to Singapore, pay him 7 times as much. What do you say to that? How do you counter, right? So it's really knowing about what the market excels in, and I think more investment in those deep skills is going to be very important.
Well, that's a really good point. We talk about it a lot. I mean, one thing that we had, especially in the early days of building up the Maltese market, was there wasn't a giant talent pool. It's taken 2 decades to build that talent pool. And still today, what happens is you have now too much congestion, prices go up. I think the Philippines won't ever suffer from that level. Okay, maybe here in the city, but where is the education focus? You touched on something really, really important, and I know we're going to divert a little bit, but you need to look at the talent available in the market. I think the Philippines has strongly capitalized on call centers, language skills, development is lacking, but it's very interesting because I've seen a swing towards Vietnam, for example, for development. Why is that? Why is Vietnam capitalizing on this market? Why are developers going there? Is it a push for more development education in the region? Where is it coming from, Kyle? I mean, do we see a change here, promotion of development education in the Philippines? I'd love to explore this a little bit more because as a platform, we're always looking to build development hubs. Where do you go?
I wish I knew the actual core reasons behind it. All I know is, yes, I see more and more people moving toward Vietnam, and just because of what you can get for the money, whereas the Philippines, maybe it's the education, software development education, a bit more Java, older technologies where maybe newer things should be supported. I wish I knew the reasons. I don't. What I do know is the money seems to be moving more toward Vietnam for those type of hard tech kind of roles. Philippines excels with a lot of frontline support, front end, web development, like I said earlier, creatives. These are the type of things that it does very well in, whereas if you want that kind of, golden full stack developer, maybe that's much more of a Vietnam type of thing these days.
100%, and that's kind of what we're here to explore. So I want to switch over to you, Ramon. You know the local market. Where is the education going?
Well, could I take a stab to answering his thing, because I have some experience in this. So when Japan needs 3 million foreign workers, they actually have created a pathway for people to migrate to Japan legally and eventually find residency, eventually find, believe it or not, a Japanese passport. The issue here is that China and Vietnam are what you call command economies, whereas the Philippines is a democratic economy. So when Japan had passed, you need 360 hours of skill, language, and cultural training. Within 24 hours, Chinese government and Vietnamese government complied with what Japan. The Philippines has 120 hours, of which has nothing to do with what Japan mandated on 360. It was only by the intercession of the private sector with the, at that time, Philippine Overseas Employment Agency and Department of Migrant Workers to have private sector step in to give that training. And let me give you an example. If you walk around the stands, you'll see basically what you would see in a Las Vegas or an SBC in Portugal. I mean, the Philippines has come so far because of the leadership of the administrations that have come in. But what is lacking is exactly what Kyle has said. And the issue here is we don't have the mathematicians you need to do sports betting, your rocket scientists, your higher level. So the BPO, or the call center industry, actually formed an association to work with the schools here to be able to do that. And I'd like to ask Kyle, is this something that Kyle and maybe the rest of us in the gaming industry, remember the Philippines is a Catholic country. We're like aggressive, not aggressive, but a Catholic country or a Christian country is really big in gaming, but we like to say, oh, we don't like gaming. But in reality, it's an industry. So what we're hoping is, like the BPO, do you think we can make a specific call out to our industry to work with the top tier universities here, as well as, sorry to say, and I don't know if people like it, it's not anti-Filipino. We don't mind giving people permanent residency, even citizenship. There's a pathway here to the Philippines, should you want one. But basically, we need to bring in talent, trained, which will take a number of years, hopefully led by us in the gaming industry, specific to our industry. And then also bring in the relevant people to be hired in our companies here. But if you look at all the stands here, most of them are Chinese. Why? Someone told me from a Chinese gaming company, when they leave the military, I can hire a guy from X Intelligence, X this, X that, who have the higher skill set that, believe it or not, cybersecurity, blockchain, those are the same key skill sets that you need.
All I'll add to that is I love the idea of university partnerships. Often these gaming companies bring in more senior engineers from other places, but they're not going to live here forever. They'll be here a couple years. They'll, 5, 7, 10 maybe. But if more links can be built between the education system and some of those sharper engineering talents, I think that's a fantastic idea, something I totally support. And I don't believe there's much of it. I don't, maybe with the days of the POGO license, it was a little more taboo. With the PIGO license, I think it's a bit more supported by the country. So perhaps that's a great bridge to build.
Well, this is very interesting because it actually, this is what we saw back home when the gaming market landed in Malta. We're talking 2003, 2004. There was a lot of taboo. Oh, you work in gambling? You touched on it. And it's the correct word, Kyle, taboo. But if you look at what's happened over 20 years, you have specific educational systems, like the IGA, that focus purely on educating the masses on the market. And when it became a norm, now you have, let's call it with ancillary and third-party providers, 30 to 40,000 people who are directly and indirectly involved in that market in a population of just 600,000. So if you look at how long that takes to grow, the case of Malta it was a 20-year span. But here in Asia, they're already seeing a big push in the market. Sigma, we spoke about the new regulators. We spoke about, multiple bodies of government coming in to support that. But let's take a step back. I want to build here. I'm curious myself because I want to grow. What are the tax system? What is income tax like for a foreign company to come and invest? And we want to give those workers benefits so they don't get poached and go to Singapore to go work for Visa and other firms. What is the benefits that we can expect to see from an employer's side, Ramon?
Okay, here's a little bit of I personally see this because I deal with the regulatory environments, right? You have a lot of overlapping things. So if you look at special economic zones in the world, there are about 5,400 of them. The largest is China, but very few people know the second largest in the world is the Philippines. So you have a lot of different regimes. So if you were to set up, let's say, in a CESA, or let's say in a Bataan, a Freeport area of Bataan, do you know that foreign resident workers, as long as you have a tax treaty, only need to pay 15% income tax? And then if you are structured, again, this is the question of whether, is it DTI that comes in, that authority such as Freeport area Bataan or CESA that comes in, that is your final tax authority? Because you can structure things very cost efficient, especially whether it's movement, visa, quality of life. And I think a lot of people, someone said it earlier, what is the age of the quality of life now people going into the gaming industry? These are the type of guys who like to bring their dogs to work, their cats. Your Gen Z, has an attention span of 15 to 30 seconds. So they're looking not for maybe the traffic of Metro Manila, and with Starlink maybe anywhere in the country on a beach somewhere, but the issue is to resolve all of these conflicts. At what point when it says your franchise tax of 5% is your final tax in lieu of all others, and then you receive a notice from, let's say, BIR that says, oh, you have VAT due, who actually wins? Or recently we signed another law, which is the internet transaction tax. Well, technically we're doing everything on the internet, so does PAGCOR's original law therefore exempt us? But from the basis of a foreigner moving in here, I think one of the things that they like in some of these zones as Kyle said, one-stop shop. It's almost like Singapore. You're getting your registrations done in a week, not the 2 months, 3 months that it normally takes. We've also enacted the one-person corporation, which before you needed to find 5 people. So this is really an interesting thing. Singapore is obviously easier. They found it onerous that you had to pay $2 to incorporate. Now it's $1. But the Philippines has also lowered it, just not as low as Singapore.
Fantastic. I know we're being hailed because we've run out of time, but that's a very interesting point. Just to close on this, you know, as an employer, as someone who's set up multiple development teams, I mean, it's quite interesting. 15%, it's very decent compared to, you know, some European states you're paying as high as 65. I mean, like that in the Balkans, it's as high as 65. I definitely see potential in the market. I think it's going to grow. We're definitely going to be expanding ourselves, but unfortunately we've run out of time. I want to say thank you to our panelists, Kyle and Ramon. Let's give them a warm hand, and thank you, Sigma, for hosting us.